Thank you so much. Good gracious. So if you're visiting, I always start with words from the great Frederick Buechner, who I give credit. Go where your best prayers take you. Unclench the fists of your spirit and take it easy. Breathe deeply of the glad air and live one day at a time. Know that you're precious and learn to trust. So thank you for that. Gosh, very lovely. Thank you. And I assume Jason or EJ are both collaborated for that, so thank you. Well, it's probably an early morning for you if you stayed up late. Early church, everybody kind of said, I said, I'll let you catch up before I start talking. And not quite what we hoped for, but you know what? Football is always still fun. Great to watch those young men play. Good gracious, what athletes. So I hope you can set some of that aside and be here and catch up with yourself a bit, because that's why we gather. What is something, I have a question for you, what is something that you enjoy, some small activity that brings you just happiness? And I'm going to use a different word, bliss. That literally when you do it, it's blissful. It's an old-fashioned word, but a great word. So think about that for a second. Just hold on to it and remember it through the day. Brings you warmth, brings you something of, you can't almost describe the feelings. Okay, I'll tell you mine, one of mine, and this is an important one right now. My example is a simple one. I get to drive my granddaughter to school. I'm not kidding. I would do it every day, but I have a little competition for that. Her name is Lois, so I get trumped a lot. But I love to pick up Andy and take her to school, and I think I like to do it mostly because I see her first thing in this morning, and so it's like watching the weather change. That's how little children are. So it's watching her in the morning. It's so much fun for me. Some days she's so perky and jumps on it and we're talking. Some days she sits quietly, kind of restively. She's in her mind. Sometimes I think she's asleep and still in bed, and that's okay too. And my favorite day of the week to drive is Friday, because those of you at ESK know what Friday is. It's spelling day, and I love it because you know what? I have a sheet, and we do spelling words all the way to school, and it is a riot. And the pleasure for me is to watch her learn, to watch and listen and watch her face when she's proud of these difficult things. So they teach them the rules, the old spelling stuff, you remember this? Teach you the rules, I before E, E before I, which is which, you know, all that kind of business. And then lists and lists, and then some very hard words. And she just does it so well, and she's getting better and better. And I'm proud of her, but more importantly, I'm thankful for the school and thankful that she can learn, because, you know, reading is essential. It's it. It's the base. She'll do well. You get that part, you've got everything. So Fridays are just wonderful for me. But it's gotten me to think about something, a different kind of question I want you to ask yourself. So kind of let my story slide. But ask yourself this, particularly as adults, older adults, how do we learn? How is it that we really learn in life? And it's a very important question. For me, learning is lifelong. So I keep asking myself, how do I keep engaging in that process and not stay in one place? We can choose to do that, or we can do what the teachers are doing with my granddaughter, is helping her go forward. How do you at your age go forward? How do you keep learning? Is it learn the rules and then repetition? It works for some things. Do they do math tables in the third grade still? We did it endlessly. I was always bad at math, but I did learn my math rules. I bet you did too. Is that how it is? Well, I'm going to tell you what I think. I guess you knew that. I think adults learn by experience. And I've always believed that experience is the teacher. It is the qualifying teacher for all of us. And unfortunately, hard, difficult experience is the best teacher. It is that crucible that gets us to be in one place and promotes us to be in another place with a different perspective and often different behavior. So I'll give you an example. So I want you to drift with me a little bit. 45 years ago, you're in Shelbyville, Tennessee, little Shelbyville, 8,000 people, home of the walking horses. I was Church of the Redeemer. It actually was a Friday. I'm sitting in my office, and I'm a newly minted priest, one of the young clergy, newly ordained to the priesthood, sent off to my first place to be by myself. I'm sitting in my office, I'm preparing a sermon, thinking about the day, kind of like young clergy do, figuring out what am I supposed to be doing every day. Kind of had some ideas. I'd been with a great mentor, Jim Curtis, down in Chattanooga before. Well, I hear a car drive up, and in our little area, I had a new little addition. They put on an addition to the building, and that's where my office was. And we had a little great hall, and then just a beautiful old colonial church, very small footprint. Well, the cars just drove up almost to my door. Well, I heard a car drive up, heard the outside door open, a little tap on my door, and I looked up, and it was my senior warden. I said, hey, and his name was John Castleberry. I said, hey, John, what are you doing? I said, hey, it's great. Come on, please, come in, sit down. And so I kind of moved where I was and went around from my desk and sat down. And then I noticed that John didn't walk to me because I was sitting beside my desk. He starts walking, doesn't say a word, and he stops and looks at me, and he takes his handful of keys, and he throws them on the desk, and they bounce and hit the wall. And I look up, and I went, I was stunned. I said, John, what? John. And then I hear in this shaky voice, he said, well, I guess I just ought to quit. I think that's what I'm going to do. If this is how it's going to be, I'm going to quit. And I had the presence of mind as a young man to say, whoa, slow down a second, John. Let me catch up. I really want to hear you. Hang on a second. I said, you're not leaving. I said, please sit down. And so he said, okay. So he sat down. And then in a quiet voice, he's sitting there kind of looking down, and he said, you just don't need me. You don't need me. I might as well quit. You see, John, to tell you about him, was well into his 70s. And I was really young. You saw my pictures, I looked like Doogie Howser. I was a kid. And I was a kid in my soul too, which was fun and not so much fun probably for that congregation. And John was a real gentleman, a good friend. Gosh, he was a great guy in the community. But John and his wife lost a little boy when he was a young man. And then he had a long career as an accountant, and as soon as he retired, his wife died. And the church meant everything to him. I mean, everything to him. And we needed John. There were only about 60 of us when I went. We needed everybody. Everybody was on deck. And he was just invaluable. And I have to tell you, thank goodness for this, and I thank God for this. I realized John was right. You see, I was so fired up as a young priest. Oh, by the way, if you think I have energy now, you should have seen me at about 28 or 29. I was going 90 miles an hour with ideas and energy and projects. I had lots of ways we were going to do this show. And I was being a priest in the way that I had been trained, really, in the secular world. Through lots of experiences, Wonder Bread, Hostess Cake, other things. Man, I was going at it. You did your job and you worked hard. And I was working hard. I wish I could say that Friday 45 years ago has not been repeated, but it has been with you all and other people I've served. That I had kind of learned the lesson once for all, but I did not. And that I'd broken the rule, but I have broken the rule. You see, I truly figured out when John walked in that I'd missed something. I knew it in here, thankfully. I think my soul was okay, but up here I'd missed it. That the church primarily, and I would say primarily like 98%, is about one thing. It's about relationships. It's about relationships. And somehow, you know what? I kind of missed that just a little bit. The beginning and the end, the alpha and omega in church is relationships. It's about us coming here and each of our individual relationships with God as we put them together. And then our relationships with one another as we make this journey. And kind of really, I want to say, I've thought about this lots of years and I've practiced it this way for good or ill. I kind of think that's really what it's all about. I'm really not sure what we do, not what we accomplish. We do a lot. We do accomplish a lot, actually. Like today, our partnership with Green Magnet Academy, the partnerships we have with like Vine Middle School Clinic. I mean, we do some really great things as a congregation. And you all individually do great things. I'm not saying that. We do really good things. But what we do here is about each other. And we do that and we don't do that. I do value that and I perform that well, and at times I do not do that. And you know that's true. By the way, you do that as well. You do it well sometimes and sometimes you don't. But remember, we're Anglicans. That's why we say our confession. We know we don't do it right all the time. That's not the point. The point is we keep learning from the experience. What does church mean? What does community mean? How valuable is it? And I would say in this culture, it is everything. It is everything. Look around. You see, I figured out later, I don't think I knew it then, but as I grew older, and now being older, I realized John was after something so simple, and you all know what it is because every one of you have it, and I do too. John wanted to be wanted. John wanted to be needed. It's that simple. I learned the lesson. And I believe that to 100% of the value that I am. I mean that. As a father, grandfather, anything. But it's been a learning process. Hopefully I'm getting better at it. I have no idea. Some days good, some days not. The reason I preach about all this is not to just throw something in the air. It's because we read the book of Hebrews, which is so difficult to study and understand. You need a PhD in something. I'm not sure what it is. It's incredibly hard until you get this succinct, clear, precise thought that is loaded with impact. It's what it's all about. Let us consider how to provoke one another to love and good deeds, not neglecting to meet together. We're here to provoke, to instill, to stir up love, and then to do good deeds, I hope with one another and beyond ourselves. You see, when we do that, the book of Hebrews said, you're the church. I have no idea what you've been taught. I have no idea what you read, but I read what you read, and it sure looks like a lot of other stuff. And I think it's real basic. I think we come here to provoke love and to provoke deeds, good deeds in one another. I truly believe, I bet many of you do too, that's our DNA. Not as St. John's people, but as Christians. Christians in the world seem so naive, too tenderhearted, too hopeful. It's because we do one thing. We provoke love and we provoke good deeds. And by the way, you know what they are. Hebrews is real clear. It doesn't try to tell you what they are because we know when they're good. And how do you feel when you've done a good deed? You feel good, and you should. It's the payoff. Don't be ashamed of it. Don't turn away from it. I asked people, how did that feel? Didn't think good, but it felt great. I said, you're on it. You did a good deed. And we need to do them for ourselves. And often the person being served, right? So simple. Like bringing food for 80 families, many of them refugees from Africa, who now feel some kind of warmth from us. It's so simple and so small, we don't even know sometimes what the wave that we just starts, what it will produce downstream. We have no idea. But the church has proven over 2,000 years that those waves get bigger and bigger, and they do change history. There's no doubt about it. For some of you that need a thought about this, if this is too feely, then let me give you a thought. I recalled the great words of John Wesley, who was an Anglican, he was an Episcopalian, and started a Methodist church. Don't know why he did that, but he just had to do that. Probably recounted on it. No, I recanted, I doubt it. He said this, The Bible knows nothing of solitary religion. The Bible, we come and we preach, hopefully from the Bible. We read it, we study it. The Bible knows nothing of solitary religion. There's no I in it. That's your religion. Our religion, our Christianity together is a we. It is we together. Remember, we are Jewish in our heritage. The Jews believed it to the nth degree and still practice it. That's why they've survived so much. They are a we. Yes, we're I's, but in this culture, we need a lot more we. I really believe it. I bet you do. And do we provoke one another to love? Absolutely. Watch it all the time. I see it every day, hundreds of times a week. Do we provoke one another to good deeds like this? Absolutely. Who had that idea? It may be irrelevant. Who has the idea? The acquitting of it, our process in being part of it. That's what it's all about. And it always has been and will be. We show up. We do simple good deeds. You know, this really is our DNA. This is who we are. This is our purpose, our meaning, and our mission. So if anybody asks you what the church is, quote Hebrews. Simply about the business of provoking love and maybe doing a good deed. I want to tell you one story to end. I told one of the parents, the other parent I haven't told, but it's about their daughter, little Natalie. And Rhonda Wrights was sitting where she always sits, right about over there, one morning. And you know, in a little while, that clamor of 30 or 40 kids is going to come in here. By the way, they're going to commit the peace, which will be after a little talk. But they came in. Well, she started up the aisle and she couldn't find her parents. And you could tell her lips started quivering. This is some years ago. She's an acolyte now, a little older. But you could tell she was upset and worried. And she was looking around and then the more she upset, the more she got. And then she started gently crying. Well, it turns out, of course, her parents were in the back ushering. When I heard the story, I said, well, I know where they were. And then she looked over, and there was Rhonda, and she recognized Rhonda. She looked around the adults, but she saw Rhonda. She knew Rhonda sits behind her all the time. And Rhonda simply put her hand out. And she took her hand, and she sat down with her and quit crying. And by the way, she did get returned to her parents. That's the kind of church I want to belong to. That's where I want to be. And that's what this place is. You are aware of that, I hope. I don't know what we don't get done. I watch what we do, and it's a lot. It's a lot of soul and a lot of heart. And you know what? It makes it all work. Amen.